Let's get educated. That's why we're here, to bring you the stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses. It's time for a little education.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Katie Petrick, joined by Mr. David Fiorazzo.
Hello.
And it's Thursday.
Yes, it is.
So that means we are about a whole week into the premiere week of Worldview Matters. David, how's it been going?
It's been fun. Worldviewmatters.tv. It's been great. Kick things off with J.B. Hickson on Monday. We talked about the biblical worldview and why it's on decline in America. Tuesday, the busy mom, Heidi St. John, a great conversation with her. Man, talk about someone who's a great example of getting off the bench and into the game. Then Wednesday, Trevor Loudon, yesterday. And today's show was with former transgender Laura Perry Smaltz. Just a great week of guests to kick off the show. I was so pleased with how each one went, and so blessed to be able to share their expertise with a new audience.
David, You get no sleep anymore. You're up early for the show.
Yep.
You stay up late for us.
Not too late.
So busy.
Yeah.
But he's got pumpkin spice lattes.
That makes it all work.
Just being injected into the veins at this point.
Yep.
So please, if you have extras, send them our way. David could use a
Sure.
few.
Keurig.
All right. Well, before we actually get started, just one little quick note. We just launched a new video channel on Rumble. So if you prefer that platform, please do follow us by visiting rumble.com/FreedomProject.
And before I introduce our very special guest, Mr. Newman, he had me on the Sentinel Report and last week. So it was great to talk to Alex there, and he put in a big plug for Worldview Matters. So I was blessed to be able to talk to Alex, and I'm going to have him on as a guest soon. But it's that special time where every week we check in with our favorite Floridian, Mr. Alex Newman, and see what story he has to share with us this week. Hey, Alex.
Government schools and local libraries should be used for socialist organizing. Yep, that's according to the Marxist lesbian president of the American Library Association. She was trying to run incognito at a major socialism conference that took place last week in Chicago, but she was actually scheduled to speak there. They nixed her from the program after she became a major scandal and embarrassment. But anyway, she went up to one of the mics after a panel discussion and chimed in hugely explosive comments. This is the same lesbian Marxist. By the way, that's how she describes herself. That's not meant as an insult. That's just the way she describes herself. She has become notorious in recent months for basically being an absolute hater. She hates parents. She hates families. She hates Christians. She hates conservatives. She hates anybody else who stands in the way of her plan to indoctrinate children, subvert the family, and have a revolution to bring about a Marxist society. So these bizarre comments about using schools and libraries for socialist organizing, that was at the Socialism 2023 conference in Chicago, organized by a coalition of revolutionary organizations, including Muslim organizations, including communist organizations, and many others. One of the things they were advocating for was for the right of children to engage in prostitution. So, that's the kind of people she is hanging out with. But she did not hold back in her comments. She says public education needs to be a site of socialist organizing. Listen.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a librarian. I just wanted to say but I think your point that public education needs to be a site of socialist organizing, I think libraries really do too, and I haven't seen that for the working in libraries, but I think there's real opportunity here to both connect what's happening in public education, what's happening in libraries, but also we need some help in the libraries. We need to be on the agenda of socialist organizing.
Yeah, we need to be on the agenda of socialist organizing, says Emily Drabinsky, this lesbian Marxist who only identified herself as a librarian named Emily when she went out to the mic. So this panel that she was on, that she spoke at, was really nefarious. We know because an infiltrator with hidden camera and microphone went in there. She posted all this on Substack. But she says, among other topics, they were talking about how teachers could ignore the law and brainwash children with critical race theory propaganda, even in jurisdictions where that is not legal. Pretty crazy, but of course that is what these people believe. So the American Library Association, they actually chose this lesbian Marxist last spring, and very quickly we had a firestorm of criticism. It came out that she had blasted angry white mob parents who were seeking to protect their children from grooming, sexualization, LGBT propaganda, race mongering, etc. And actually, in a 2009 article, this came out in the news recently, she said she started identifying as a lesbian at age 14 after she read a library book about two homosexuals having what she described as fantastic queer sex in a field. So she thinks other 14-year-olds should be getting these types of propaganda books at their schools so that they too can understand the glories of fantastic queer sex in a field. Folks, this is crazy, right? These are the people who are using your tax money to hurt your children. One of the big groups that was part of this event in Chicago, the Democratic Socialists of America. A lot of these groups are really fringe, wackadoodle revolutionaries. Democratic Socialists of America is an incredibly powerful group. They've got a lot of their minions in the U.S. Congress, believe it or not. They had panels at this conference on abolishing the family and replacing it with government. Yep, true story. Also, they had a panel on best practices for developing socialist programming for kids. Another panel called for abolishing the police and the U.S. border. One called for creating an alliance between socialists, pro-abortion fanatics, and transgender activists to fight Christians. And so good things are happening despite this madness. Actually, you guys probably remember the mass exodus we saw from state school boards out of the National School Boards Association after they got caught asking the Biden regime to target parents as terrorists for opposing the madness going on in the public schools. Well, now more and more people are calling for state library groups to ditch the American Library Association, and it's starting to happen. Just this summer, citing the far-left ideologies and the Marxist leader of this atrocity, the Montana State Library Commission voted to leave. They said in their statement, "Our oath of office and resulting duty to the Constitution forbids association with an organization led by a Marxist." Kudos, Montana State Library Commission. Another official who chimed in here, Elsie Arnson, she's the Montana Superintendent of Public Instruction. She said, Ms. Drabinski is a supporter of critical race theory, which Montana rejected as discriminatory, and other far left-leaning ideologies that have no place in our schools and libraries. By electing a declared Marxist as their president, the ALA has not only turned its back on families, parental rights, and American values, it has turned its back on America itself. Folks, if your state library is still part of this, if your state library association is still paying your tax money as dues to this horrific, monstrous organization targeting your children, you should make a few phone calls. Folks, taxpayer funding is being weaponized here, and it's being weaponized to foment a revolution against us, the people paying for this, the people footing the bill for this kind of dangerous extremism. It's time for the library systems to leave the ALA, and it's time for the government to stop turning our children into Marxists and revolutionaries using these government schools. The system needs to be shut down, and the future of our country is literally on the line. Thanks, guys.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on pristine quality bedding, towels, slippers, signature pillows, and much more when you use the code EDUCATED. That's EDUCATED. Educated. Support this show and a great American company.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am Dr. Duke, and I am joined by Vicki McKenna. Vicki, how are you today?
Well, I'm excited to discuss, filth midweek.
Yeah, it is unbelievable when you think about it. I mean, at some point, you run the risk of desensitizing people because it gets so bad so fast. I guess the takeaway we'll start with for me on this story is a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, public schools would pretend it's not happening and then kind of offer a mute apology for this kind of stuff in the schools. Now we're at the point where the public schools are simply saying, hey, tough noogies, this is the standards, this is what the DPI wants, this is what the feds want, so go talk to Joe Biden if you got a problem. Our story is about...
I was going to say, they're making parents have a knockdown, drag-out fight on every single book and every single issue and every single teacher and every single lesson. Because even if you win a fight, the school district is not willing to, remove all of the offensive material or take care of all of the offensive lessons. They make you fight every single issue to bloody knuckles.
And if they do take a book away, what they replace it with is as bad or worse. And you think this is bad. Wait till parents find out in November that masks are back full force, and then see how they try to fight that, because that ain't going to work either, unfortunately. And so this particular story, Vicki, is Wisconsin School District. This is Kenosha, Wisconsin. Defends offering kids written guides to anal sex and sexuality kinks, claiming that the content passed the selection guidelines. I love that argument. So we have made porn.
How? I would like to know how. What are the selection guidelines?
Well, I was about to say, the selection guidelines now probably say that radical LGBTQ blah 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 blah.
WTF?
Yes, that their sexuality. I think I sent you a story about this last week, where one school district is actually arguing. They're arguing that New York, the entire state, is arguing that to remove pornography when it's associated with gay sex is a human rights violation against LGBTQ people. That's
what they're claiming, that vile, deviant, BDSM, kink, other types of dangerous sexuality, that's a right. That's a human right. But you as a parent don't have a right to protect your child from exposure to these materials. Mind you, nobody still can walk into a convenience store and plunk down however much it is and walk out with a pornographic magazine without showing ID. You can't do that. But in the schools, the books we're talking about here are as bad in some cases. And as long as it's trans or gay or non-binary, it's totally fine that your 6-year-old has access to that material. And we're going to talk about a story in this segment that has libraries hiding materials that offend gay people and trans people and non-binary people. So totally fine to rub your 6-year-old's nose in filth. Not okay for your kid to check out Harry Potter.
Well, and the logical conclusion of what you just said, Vicki, and it's inevitable, is there will come a time in short order where graphic pornography bought over the counter for little kids is going to be okay. I mean, if you're teaching them in the schools, if you're providing them radical sexuality, imagery, and advice, and giving them consent, well, then how can you withhold it from them? I mean, the idea that this will just stay in the schools is nonsense. And tell me the marketers of pornography aren't going to see that. If a fifth grader, a seventh grader is getting the equivalent of what our magazines or our website is doing, if you deny that 11-year-old access to Pornhub gay sites, well, then you're actually doing the same thing that moms and dads are. You are punishing kids for their sexuality. Wisconsin
DPI has materials available for teachers to use in comprehensive sex education that advise them. In fact, Planned Parenthood, you might have remembered that story not long ago, but advises children to check out pornographic websites. Advises them. Now, mind you, we know what porn does to the brain. We know how it rewires the brain. It acts like a foreign substance. It acts like a drug or a toxin, and it can actually rewire brain chemistry. But you know what? Let's have the schools suggesting kids check out kink porn online. Mind you, again, you're supposed to show some kind of age verification, but you've got the schools telling kids to seek this stuff out. And let's not forget, we talked about this on a maybe it was the last show or the show before this, SECUS. This is an organization that is advising schools in Wisconsin. It's advising schools nationwide, California, Indiana, Iowa, and it's sex ed for social change. It's about promoting the idea that, heteronormative sexual attraction and sex itself is it's either oppressive or it's just too mundane to bother about. And it advocates for aggressive exposure of very young people to graphic sexual content. So, here we are in Kenosha. I'm not surprised. Nobody should be surprised at this point. But the message, the takeaway from this for all parents should be, you don't think it's in your kid's school? You're just wrong about that, because it's there.
Yeah, this was a tip that was sent to the invaluable libs of TikTok, and they did a deep dive. And you see this sort of stuff here. To whom it may concern, I am gathering information for a story about the pornographic books your school district, Kenosha district currently has available to students to view, use, and check out from your public school libraries. The following pornographic books are currently available in your schools. Flamer, which is unbelievably bad, available at 5 schools. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which is nasty, available at least 4 schools. Genderqueer, which we've talked about endlessly, is available in 2 schools. Let's Talk About It is also available in the district. We talked about that book. It's a how-to guide for radically dangerous sex. And then This Book is Gay, an ebook available online to anybody who wants to take it out, little kids included, from the district. The investigator says, for proper context, I have attached screenshots from the above-mentioned books. Here are the books that we're talking about here. They are radical in their filth. I can't think of another word for it.
Listen, what I know that you're not showing the actual images from the book because it is shocking, but everybody needs to go look at the images in this book and understand that this is what 6-year-olds are exposed to. We're talking about graphic depictions of anal sex, graphic depictions of oral sex, graphic depictions of kink. They're either in cartoon form or in extremely detailed illustration form. And it's those are picture books. Every book you showed is a picture book. It's not just text. It's a picture book. And so, I mean, I understand why you don't want to offend people by showing them on this show, but your 6-year-olds are being exposed to images that are so vile that, they make adults uncomfortable to see. So everyone should go to their library, their kid's library, or any library. Check these out, march up to the librarian, open the book, plunk it down and say, you explain to me why this is okay for my 6 or 7-year-old, and watch them squirm. And if every parent did that, went to the school library, went to the regular city library, opened up those books and showed it to the librarian and then demanded that person explain, maybe they'd be removed. But if 50 parents did it or 100 parents did it, they'd be put behind the desk, behind the counter at that point. And I mean, it's got to take a concerted and sustained effort on behalf of activists to deal with this, because, winning one little battle here or there is not going to be enough. They just move on to the next target.
Well, and I think you're right about the moment we live in, but I fear this is changing quickly. I really do believe now we're entering in a new era when you do up with a mom, you show up and you open that book and you point directly to the bad images with a librarian. I think we're reaching the point where they figured out no one's ever gotten fired. No one gets fired. No one gets reprimand. And if
I agree with you. No one's going to get fired, but it's going to make them crawl out of their skin. And they don't want to look into the face of a grandmother and explain why a depicted 14-year-old boy inserting his penis where it has no business being is appropriate for a 6 or 7-year-old kid. That's what I'm talking about. Because I think you're right. No one's getting fired over this. It takes an act of God to get someone fired. But you can make their day suck by doing this regularly and forcing them to explain graphic pornography for children while you're sitting there tapping your foot saying, could you explain it, groomer?
Well, and basically the response of the Kenosha School District that we have it so far is this. Here's the response. Kenosha, KUSD, staff use selection and deselection guidelines to evaluate the library collection on a regular basis. At any point, they can deem titles no longer meet the needs. When did they ever, by the way, of school communities and process books accordingly? Parents, guardians who have concerns are encouraged to contact their child's school office for assistance and support. In other words, we and a bunch of other people approve these books. Now, maybe they're no longer useful. And do you believe for 1 second, no longer useful means that they're too pornographic or they're not pornographic enough? Which one would you bet they mean in their selection process?
I would bet no longer useful means not filthy enough.
Exactly.
Or something that doesn't actively promote alt sexuality. That's what I would say. And to your point, there was a selection guideline that exists that somehow managed to check the box on all these dirty books. So their selection guideline is like, oh, graphic depictions of sexual behavior between children or children and adults. Absolutely. Let's put that one on the shelf. And incidentally, the shelf typically is at eye level for a child. So what they're saying is, first they're saying to the reporter who contacted them, get bent. That's the first thing they're saying by not answering any questions. Secondly, they admitted that there are selection criteria and a group of people at least signed off on all of these books. And then they admit that they're monitoring the problem when the reporter was inadvertently included on a reply by the superintendent. So we know that the library staff, that the superintendent, everybody's in on the joke here. And they think that by ignoring this reporter, they're going to be able to stave off any kind of confrontation on this. But a confrontation is brewing, and that will happen. And yet it will be yet again another fight that parents are required to battle and to go face off against 6'5" nightmare men dressed as women with fake boobs and clown makeup on, threatening to kill them while they're trying to just have rational behavior by teachers, librarians, and school administrators so their children and grandchildren aren't exposed to deviant filth in the classroom, especially when most of them can't read or write at grade level.
There is much more to talk about, but for the rest of the story, check out the full episode of The Dr. Duke Show.
If you have a smartphone, tablet, Roku, or Apple TV, consider downloading the Freedom Project Media app. It's 100% free and includes all of our weekly shows, plus lecture series, archive programs, and award-winning animated videos for families like the Presidential Minute, Battles of America, and Heroes of the West. Don't rely on the social media giants to keep you informed. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app from your app store and allow notifications. And we'll let you know when a new video is ready.
All right, friends, we've all been experiencing a little extra pain at the pump thanks to the Biden administration and the rising gas prices. But for one state, residents are moving out of the days of Mayberry and gas station attendants and into a brave new world.
Ooh, that's right. For the first time in 72 years, Oregon's governor has now made it legal for residents to pump their own gas when they need to fill the tank. Take a look.
All right, great. I've always been in favor of choice, so both sides should be happy now.
Both sides will be happy because now there is a choice to pump or not to pump. Either way, the price remains the same. But let's lay down some key rules on this. First, a gas station does not have to provide self-serve if they don't want to. They have a choice too. And so drivers, that means you cannot pump your own gas if the station is not allowing it. That works for this Prius driver named Sophie.
Still love having someone else do it for me.
Why?
They're so nice.
Yep.
And I moved from somewhere where they don't do that for you, so I enjoy it.
Now in Oregon's 16 most populated counties, Multnomah County obviously included, stations could designate up to half of their pumps as self-serve. They would need to keep at least one attendant on site to pump gas for the non-self-serve crowd. In Oregon's 20 other lesser populated counties, no attendant is required, meaning stations could go fully self-service if they wanted to.
All right, well, the new law in Oregon now makes New Jersey, of all states, the only state that is actually left in America that does not allow drivers to pump their own gas. David.
The old days. I remember that. You pull up to the pump, someone comes out and does it for you. What was funny about that clip, though, when they showed the gas going past $50 and it's still going.
Let's talk about that more so.
They didn't really. They just kind of showed the pump over $50.
Over 50.
And
Cha-ching.
But they didn't know comment
Nothing
on that.
to see here.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little floored because I didn't know any states were left like this. And it's quite fascinating considering it's Oregon where no one works. And so how did they find anyone to work to do the gas pumping for them? And maybe it's because maybe now, like, no one is allowed to have gas vehicles because Oregon's, I'm sure, so environmental on the issue that it's not needed to have these gas attendants anymore. You can't, it's not sustainable in their mind.
They'll phase them out.
So I get now the elderly gentleman who maybe is a gas attendant out in Oregon has to find a new gig. Any other jobs you could do as a retired person who's just looking to fill the day with time? I don't know.
Well, I'm glad they have a choice now.
Now they have a choice.
Yes.
This is true. Unless they don't have a choice because they chose to not make it so you could do it on your own and then dip. I guess it's choice of only the gas station itself, not the people. How appropriate to the way the state of our United States is. I'm just depressed
A heavy
now.
sigh to end the week from Katie Petrick.
That was, it started out so good and then it just went down the pipeline too soon. All right, well, that's going to wrap up Educated and Worldview Matters for this week. Now, don't forget, you can catch Educated on the go by simply subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. And if you are in the mood, if you'd like to just, leave us a 5-star review for our quality banter here, we'd very much appreciate it.
For Katie and myself, as always, thanks for watching, listening, and sharing and supporting the show. And until next week, stay educated, America.